Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Good morning, everybody. This is Critical Failure. You are listening to Tiger Claw Radio. My goodness, what a week it's been. We had Halloween. There was candy, there was kids, there was video games. Had a really good time. It's been a really good week. And I got two van casts that came in, well, I say came in like they were mailed to me, that I managed to put together this past week that I think were pretty quality as they go. So let's listen to some chip tunes and we'll go over what happened this past Halloween. We're going to have a good time. All right, stick with us. You're listening to TCR. That's one from the Battle of the Bits Very Rare Formats compilation that came out several months back. It's not free anymore, but it is still available. I believe it's $3 to $5. I can't remember exactly how much it is. Not a lot. Very good compilation, 25 songs, and that particular song was... Golly, I forgot. No, I didn't. Here it is. It's the 25th song, so the very last song. It is Golden Dennis and Robin doing a collaboration. And the name of the song is The Theme of the Jonas Gabrielian. It's the last song on that one if you want to look it up. All right. Let's turn the Wayback Machine to, I don't know when, 3 days ago, 4 days ago? You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, afternoon, everybody. It's the Vancast. Not one of those fake me out captain's logs, but a really real Vancast. I'm in the van, pulling out now. It is 2:56 in the afternoon, and today is my boy's birthday. So, he likes pizza from a very special place. And typically, it's not a close place. It's like 30 plus minutes away. So, when we're not in quarantine, it's in the next town over. We can drive down there, and we get the pizza, and we can do things like there's a pretty big thrift store down there I like to check out, where I've made a lot of really awesome hits over the years at that thrift store. And, a couple other things. So we drive down there, we get the pizza, and we have some fun in town. But since we've been in quarantine, we haven't had this pizza in months. Now, we don't get this pizza a lot anyway because we make pizza from scratch in my home. It's something my wife and I have been doing as a team for 10 plus years. I make the dough, she makes the pizza once she has viable dough. That's been the way we do it. So occasionally we go back to this one special place for the kids, and that's pretty much it. So that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm making a special trip to the next town so I can get this special pizza for my boy's birthday and bring it home. And we will continue to have good times, and merriment will be had by all. This morning I woke up and sat down in my office before work with about an hour to spare, like I usually do, just chilling out. And he came in and sat with me and was like, "Hey, Dad, why don't you play some Mario Brothers 3?" Okay. So I resumed my playthrough of Mario Brothers 3, just hanging out. He's basically doing the same thing I did when I was a kid. We try and restrict the video games during the week, but he can watch a Let's Play now and then, so he's watching a Let's Play straight from the tap. I did the same thing. My older brothers would lock the machines down just because I was the youngest of 5 kids, so I would sit and watch them play, and those were my Let's Plays. He's essentially doing the same thing, just watching good old Super Mario Brothers 3 being played by someone who read the guide, 20 plus years ago, whenever it was, who's played through it many times, who knows that game pretty well. But between the Mario games that came out on... I was going to say just the NES era, but I think it might be between all Mario games. This is the game that I know the best and have beaten the most times. So, he's watching me plow through the first world, finding all the obscure secrets, like the hidden P-Wing house that's in the 4th stage, where you get a certain number of coins and it unlocks a P-Wing. The coin ship, which is another really obscure secret in the first world, where you get a number of coins divisible by 11, and then the 10th digit of your score, also the same number, and then you finish on an even number, then it turns the Hammer Brother into a coin ship. Very, very obscure. The kind of tricks that were put there in order to sell guides. They were clearly not things that you were going to just find without knowing they were there. But he's watching me find all this stuff, and mind equals blown, which is always pretty sweet. Old man has a few tricks up his sleeve. So I knocked out the first world, and in the first world in Super Mario Brothers 3, you can pick up 2 warp whistles. So you can use those warp whistles immediately, but they're only going to get you as far as maybe the 5th or 6th world or something like that. The trick is, if you wait till the 2nd world to use them, then you can go from the start of the game all the way to the end of the game in like 10 minutes, because it doesn't take long to plow through that first world. When I route through it, I usually beat the first world, and then I beat the second world before I use the whistles. And the reason I do it that way is because when you beat the first world, they give you a P-Wing, and you can use that to skip the airship stage in the 8th world. And when you beat the second world, you get you get the cloud, which I think the manual called it the Jugems cloud. Basically, it turns you into a cloud on the map screen, and you can use it to skip over a stage. So using those two items, you can skip the airships level, which is an awful level in the 8th world, and you can skip one of the two regular stages that are in the 8th world. Two very difficult things that just kind of go by the wayside. So I played all the way through the second world this morning, which went way faster than I thought it would. And after that, I took the warp whistles over to the 8th world of Super Mario Bros. 3. I played the tank stage, which is the very first thing you see in the 8th world. After the tank stage, I did the skip trick for the boats, which is the second stage in the 8th world. Basically, the first stage in the 8th world is a bunch of tanks, and the second stage is a bunch of boats, but that you can just swim underneath. You don't actually have to play the boats. And that's where we left off. That puts me on the bridge. Those of you familiar with Super Mario Bros. 3, there's a lava bridge with 3 stages, and each one of the stages is like a Hammer Brother type challenge, and you get a leaf at the end of it. So I left off at that bridge. And that's been a good time, man. I want to do a video just plowing through Super Mario Bros. 3 the same way I did the first Mario game, or at least tried to do the first Mario game a couple of days ago. That's been a good time. One thing that's persistent about the Mario games, at least amongst the ones that I know well enough, the first 3, they all have pretty impressive secrets that are worth looking at, that you're not going to discover accidentally, or at least that I wouldn't have discovered accidentally. For example, think back to the boss in Super Mario Bros. 3. If you're not familiar, I'll remind you. The boss in Super Mario Bros. 3 was a Bowser fight where Bowser had a ground pound attack. And in order to beat him, you would bait him into using his ground pound to ultimately kill himself. He would smash through bricks and then go down into a deep pit and die. So, in that first stage, the walls on the left and right sides of Bowser were, screen length high. You weren't supposed to be able to get over them. But if you happen to have a P-Wing or whatever, I don't know if you could do it with a regular leaf or not, I'd have to try it. You could fly over top of one of those walls, and you could fight a harder version of the Bowser boss fight. It was the same fight, but the funnel on the bottom that he would have to ground pound through was much thinner. So instead of just having him ground pound any particular place, you could have him smash through like one small target zone. No real benefit to having him be harder, but again, you wouldn't know it was there unless somebody showed you or told you. So that might be cool to do. What I was getting at was I saw a couple of tricks like that when I was a kid from the second game, but not as many, and it's been a lot longer ago, so I don't remember them. Particularly in the last group of stages, there was a level skip where you would just like run over top of the level somehow. But it's been so long, and I remember it so vaguely, I couldn't reproduce it on command. But yeah, I'd love to play that again. Making that little Mario video, even though I died at the end of it, was a lot of fun this past week. I really enjoyed that. It felt more like playing as a kid again, which I haven't felt, to be honest, I haven't felt playing any video game, quite some time. So, regardless of my jaded opinion of the modern day Nintendo company, and regardless of my disagreement with their practices, and dealing with modern technology and basically the way they operate now, I cannot deny that the roots in which Nintendo was founded were solid games. solid games which still hold up. The original Super Mario Brothers, even though the physics are really wonky in my opinion in that first game, it still held up. I had a good time playing that game. But man, oh man, physics-wise, there is no other game like the original Super Mario Brothers. When you leap into the air, okay, you're not supposed to be able to go back the other way in midair. I think that might be the only game, with the exception of maybe the original Mario Brothers, the one-screen game. That might be the only game where you can't really correct in midair. It lets you a tiny bit, but if you make a leap and you try and pull out and go back the other way, you ain't gonna make it, Jack. And if you don't believe me, watch my Let's Play, because that's how I made my first death. No problem. I was like, what was it, the third set of stages? No. Close to the beginning of the game. It's that stage where you're jumping around on the mushroom tops, which I want to say was like the third stage or something. And I made a jump, and I got cold feet, and I tried to pull back, and I ended up going straight in the pit because I couldn't pull back far enough to get back to the ledge. And really, I mean, I don't know. I want to say that's how it should be when it comes to jumping, but I don't necessarily agree that that's the case. That's the most realistic, where once you make the jump, you're committed. But on the other hand, the question is, how do you think it should be? Should it be realistic or should it be fun? It's not the most fun, right? I like it later when you can correct a little bit. But on the other hand, I've played games where there's absolutely zero correction, like Castlevania, and I never did care much for that. So I don't know. That's a whole different can of worms. That's design theory. And one thing I know about design theory is no two people are going to agree on it. So on one hand, it makes it a terrible thing to argue about because there's no real answer. On the other hand, it makes it a great thing to argue about because there's a lot of different perspectives. So this is one of the things that I've been criticized for in the past, is sitting on the fence and not taking a real position. In this particular instance, I say make it more fun. I like the original Contra, where you can leap into the air and then you can get cold feet and backtrack, and then you can change your mind and decide to go with it and actually make the jump all in one leap because it's just that forgiving. Is it realistic? No, sir. But guess what? If you're playing a game where you're platforming, it makes it more fun. It makes it so you can conquer more crazy platforming challenges easier. And when it comes to Contra, people don't tend to remember Contra too much for how difficult the platforming was. Contra is remembered for the shooting. So, be that as it may, that's just food for thought. There are probably many examples of contrary games that have been designed differently that work just as well. That's just one way to look at it. Speaking of platforming, another platforming game that I played today for the first time in quite some time was Cave Story. You guys remember Cave Story? Oh yeah. I was playing Cave Story Plus on the Steams. And what I didn't know about old Cave Story Plus was that it has like a seasonal graphics chipset, which is weird. Like you can turn it on and off, so you're not stuck with it. But today is October 27th. So when I played it, it had a Halloween theme to it. The hero is sort of like wearing a zombie costume, and all of the mamigas, all of the little furry townsfolk or whatever, they all have Halloween costumes on. It's really neat to see, actually. And the last time I played Cave Story seriously was quite a few years back. I think it must have been when I first built the Panzer and I was still on Linux. The amount of games that I had was very limited, but one of the games that worked was Cave Story Plus. So I took my arcade stick, which is the Kanbach Q1. I believe that's like $60. Great stick, by the way. If you want to have a stick but you're not big into the fighting scene, that's a perfect stick to have. Compatibility is great, it feels great, and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. I still recommend that stick today. And it doesn't take up a lot of space either. So I took that stick, and I had kind of already washed out of the fighting scene, so I had this nice arcade stick I didn't know what to do with, and I played all the way through Cave Story on Linux, on Steam, using an arcade stick. And you know what? It was amazing. It was really good. It was really good. So this is me approaching Cave Story kind of for the first time since then, wanting to replay it. I'm not using an arcade stick this time out. I'm using a gamepad, but it's been good. It's been good. My only complaint is the default controls are just a little bit wonky. Like, I had to go in and turn on the gamepad. It didn't recognize the gamepad right away at first, which is kind of silly because, by this time, I feel like in current year, you should be able to plug in a gamepad and go. But I was able to go to the options and turn it on, no big deal. And then once I set it up, I just went with the default control scheme because I was using a PS3 fight controller. So I figured being PS3, being like a big company controller, it would probably be mapped the way it's supposed to be by default. Not really. It wasn't a huge deal, but the initial mapping didn't quite feel natural to me. I was able to adjust, but I kept finding myself in positions where, okay, I need to make this timed jump in a hurry, and I would reach over and hit like the switch weapon button instead or something and die. So, you can only blame that on the game so much. It's just me having to get good, which is absolutely a fair criticism. I just feel like I could go in, once I take the time to do it, I could go in and change the control scheme, and I could solve a lot of those issues. So that's what I intend to do, because I loved my Cave Story session. Weird deaths and control issues aside, I loved playing it again and seeing the alternate chipset. I want to play it again around Christmas time. And yeah, it was a good time. I plan on playing it all the way through. Without spoiling the story, even though it's an old game, Cave Story has multiple endings to it, and there's a way you can end the game early and get a bad ending, but you finish the game early. My first playthrough, I did not do that. I saw that, and having heard about the game, I recognized, okay, if I do this, this is the bad ending, so let's not do this, right? So I missed that the first way through, and I got a pretty good ending. Got like the middle tier ending. I'm playing it through now to get that bad ending, because there's an achievement attached to it. And I want to go get some more achievements. I'm honestly not concerned about getting them all, because there's a lot, but, getting new achievements is always fun, right? The goal doesn't always have to be get perfect achievement lists, just unlock a few more, because in a situation like this, where it's a game I played several years back, and now I'm revisiting it, all of those old achievements are still unlocked, and I can go see them in my profile, and they're date stamped, which is awesome. So that's one thing I like about achievements that has nothing to do with platinuming games or 100%ing games or completing games or anything like that. It's just the fact that it timestamps milestones involved with the game, which is really cool. So playing through a little Cave Story, which was fun. One thing that it took me a little bit to get used to, I'm almost ashamed to say it, but Cave Story doesn't give you any per diem for death. Okay, so the consequences of death in Cave Story are pretty severe. You can save at certain checkpoints, and there are a lot of them, but you don't have any extra men, and when you die, you go back to the last time you saved. So if you're trying to run through the game without saving, one death, and you're done. Okay, I ran into that problem a couple of times early on. I wasn't set back too far, but at the beginning of the game, there's a couple of cutscenes, right, that happen just as you're like sort of getting oriented and meeting all the characters and stuff. And what would happen is I would die without saving, and I'd have to go through that cutscene again. And I did that like 3 or 4 times. Finally saying, okay, fine. Even though I've just come out of the first corridor, now I know I have to save, because I could die in 5 minutes, and then it would put me back here. I've been playing modern games, so I had to get used to this idea that, okay, if you die, there's real consequences, because this is just the way it used to be. But yeah, man. Cave Story Plus on Steam. It's a great game. I was super skeptical when it first came out, because Cave Story was a freeware game, and this is, a $15 package, but it's done very, very well. I don't know. I've heard people say that the original creator, because that game was created by one single person, which is bananas, the original creator doesn't get paid for when you buy that game. But whatever, be that as it may, it's an awesome game, and just as a player, it's worth experiencing if you haven't. That was a lot of rambling about Super Mario Brothers and Cave Story and whatnot. Been in a bit of a platforming mood, I guess you could say. It's been good. I use the Hori fight pad that I got at MagFest a couple years back, which is still my go-to pad when I like to play games on the computer. And it works pretty well. Yeah, it's been good times. So, it's early in the week. Today's Tuesday, and I finished the podcast last week on like a Sunday or something, a Saturday or Sunday, or something like that. Saturday night. So it was only a couple days ago, so I don't remember if I went over this or not, but we'll review just in case. A couple weeks back, I talked about, hey, I've got space for one console on my desk. What would you make that one console? And I heard two really good arguments. One was make it the PS2, because it can run DVDs, and it can also run PS1 games. And another was make it the original NES, because it's the only flat-top console I have, and you could stack it with the Genesis, making it so you could do NES and then Genesis on top of it. Both very, very strong arguments. I ended up going with the PS2 because the form factor was really small. Like, I can still lay papers on top of it, whereas the NES and Genesis rig, yes, it would work, and yes, I'd still have access to my desk, but that's a solid brick of hardware, those two things together. You're not putting anything on top of those two things, especially a Sega Genesis tab-loading system. So I set up the PS2, and what have I been playing? Well, what should turn up in the mail, lo and behold, but the retro junk box has re-arrived from good old Hemrock's place. Now, Hemrock and I couldn't get enough takers on the retro junk box to build a route list. So I just said, hey man, you want to do it just you and me? So I guess he was like, yeah man, because that thing just showed up in the mail and I wasn't expecting it. And I love the way he did it. I'm going to make a video of this, but 100% full disclosure, I opened it off camera. He taped like a magic card to the outside of it and like a couple of stickers so you could tell it was like something special. And the magic card was, which one was it, Hemrock? I don't have it in front of me, but it was like Generous Cat or Generous Stray or something very ironic that tied in really nicely to what he was doing. But here's the catch, okay? It's just him and me. So anything he puts in that box that I don't take goes right back to him. So the only way I see to do this for realsies and make it work is to 100% empty out the box. Nothing that was in that box when he sent it to me can be there when it goes back to him. So I got to take everything and replace it all with good stuff, or find somebody else who's willing to get in on it. So I'm going to call my brother-in-law. I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to fill him in on the project and say, hey man, I know you personally. I can go to your place. We can talk. If you want to do this, you can just do the quick swap and then I'll mail it out so you don't have to pay the postage. We'll see if he's into it or not. But that would potentially get some new stuff into the box, which would be great. Now, if that doesn't work out, I got plenty of things that can go into this box. This has been like a clean house time for me. So it's not a make or break, do or die kind of deal. It's just, you put in what is, and then we make it happen. So that's awesome. So I've got an opportunity now where I can get rid of some of my games that aren't getting played, but aren't good enough, aren't valuable enough, I should say. Not good enough. That's not the right term. But aren't valuable enough to sell. And they still get in the hands of somebody else who enjoys video games. Love it. Great. Okay? I don't want to give out any examples, but I have a list of a few games that are really, really good that fetch virtually no money online. And I can stick them right in that box, and off they go. Now, on top of that, I got to put in something that's good. Can't just be all throwaway filler. That's not how this thing works. You want to do the box, you got to put something in the box that's worth that $15 it costs to ship it or what have you. So I'm really scraping. Like, I'm putting a lot of thought into this, going through all my games, figuring out what am I really playing, what is valuable enough that it has to get sold for dollars and cents, and what would be appreciated by our good buddy Hemrock. These are all good questions with many, many different answers, and I think I might have it figured out. One thing I will say is, I don't think I did a very good job the first time I had this thing. Some of the games that I put in it did not come back, which is a good sign. But this only had one stop between now and then. I filled in the box. No, that's not true. It had 2 stops, right? Because I think it went to Tecmo Balls. I filled it up. I sent it to that person, and it got stuck there for a little while. And then he sent it to Hemrock. And then Hemrock eventually sent it back. So it's been 2 stops since I last had it. But I can see some of the games, most of the games that I put in there are still in there now, which means they got passed over by 2 people. We're talking, this is the filler stuff now. The good stuff got taken. I think my favorite game that I put in there was probably Milon's Secret Castle for the Famicom. I could see that one was gone. But Mahjong for the Famicom was still in there. And Lords of Magic, the CD-ROM, was still in there, as well as a couple other things. So, you know, that stuff can't be in there again. If it's been passed on by 2 people, it's got to come out, and something else has to go in its place. Which, again, won't be too difficult to do, but it does take some digging in and some checking stuff out. So, that's that. Now, Hemrock, as you folks may remember, Hemrock digs floppy disks, 3.25-inch flops. So, we have a project between him and me. Now, I'm not sure what this is going to turn into in the future when Tigerfest comes, but we're going to keep this idea, man. I'm keeping this idea alive of generating some new content somehow and putting together a disc magazine and, you know, putting one out every year. The original idea was we'll do it and we'll distribute it at MagFest, right? So we'll be like, I don't know, CF and the Tiger Disc or something like that. With a bunch of like chiptune saves and like text files and things, just fun stuff, and then make copies of it and distribute it at MagFest. That was the original idea. Now we're talking about switching MagFest up in the future once all this clears for sort of a Tigerfest kind of deal. That being the case, I don't know, maybe we just make like 4 or 5 copies and then just pass them around amongst ourselves. At any rate, one of the things that was in this box was a couple of floppy disks. So there is a floppy drive in my house, an external one that plugs in USB, but I have to get a rig for myself because that one doesn't belong to me. I can use it, but it's the kind of deal where I have to ask to borrow it. The time has come for me to obtain an external USB floppy drive so that I can work on this disc project and we can make it really happen in the future. Because I definitely have a chiptune disc from the box that I'm super excited about. How we doing? Wow, it's been 27 minutes, guys. What is it about driving? When I'm driving, maybe it's just the fact that nobody's here, so I don't have to worry about, I don't feel like self-conscious. But something about driving, I think, really brings out the good podcasting from me. Something about it. The old stories come out. I get to that point where I can really remember how things used to be. You know what I mean? The difference between like just saying the words about what I used to play and really being able to go back there and feel that cheap blue carpet, that cheap blue throw rug we had in our unfinished basement. And I can remember our wood grain television that had this weird capacitor overload issue where if the screen got too bright, it would pulse. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And that got worse and worse over the years until one day, finally, my brother had friends over, and one of his friends was like, dude, your TV has a heartbeat. Really going back there to those memories, and I think that's where the good podcasting comes from. So I miss this. I miss the van. So big thanks to CF Jr. for sending me to the next town for pizza so we can have a really good podcast this week. I'm passing the thrift store now. I can see it on the left. I miss it, bros. I'm not going to lie. I really do. I don't feel like it's safe. I'm really... Like, some people are really coming out of their shell and getting together and hanging out and whatnot. I'm not about that, man. I'm still trying to play it close to the chest and really be safe. So I'm not doing the thrift store, but I do miss it. I got a lot of really good hits at that thrift store, you know, thinking back. And at the risk of telling stories I've already told before, my favorite thrift store hit of all time was the original Pyramid box. The original Pyramid big box edition of Tomb Raider. The original Tomb Raider with PC. Oh my gosh. How many times can I say the word original referring to a single game? But the OG of all OGs when it came to the Tomb Raider series was that old PC, man, with that vertical gatefold box for like $6. How does that even happen? Somebody must have died in order for that to show up. Either somebody died or like somebody's parents finally were like, you know what, I'm cleaning out your room because you went to college and you didn't, you know, and now you live in, I don't know, Berkeley or something, so I'm getting rid of your stuff. I don't know, but that was an amazing find. There we go. Oh, I can't go left here. Now, through the magic of pausing while this thing is recording, I now have the pizza, and I'm riding through my old town. Golly. This is the town I grew up in. So you guys have heard me tell the story many times about how... Thank you. About how I walked 40 minutes to the mall and then back and then forth to get with my buddy when we were kids to buy video games. And we made the trip several times in a single day so that he could get Star Ocean 2. Well, I'm driving that route right now. And I'm looking around. This is the same route that in the 90s had pawn shop after pawn shop after pawn shop next to each other. And you could run the route of pawn shops, you know, with a couple weeks allowance, and you could get several Nintendo games. Now, as a kid, that's how I built up my Nintendo collection. Driving through it now, all those places are gone. I still love it here. It's like a grungy town. This is not a nice town. It's a rundown. You know, a lot of the places I loved as a kid are gone. The old music shop is still here. The old guitar store. You can go in and try guitars you'll never afford. Love it. But even with all of my favorite places gone, I still love this town. This is still my home. All the grunge and dirt and bus lines, you know, and crime and danger and stuff. This is still the town that made old CF. So, many feels driving through here with my stack of 4 pizzas from my son's favorite pizza place to drive to the next town over where I live now. Hopefully fast enough that it won't be intolerably cold. But that said, we are 32 minutes into this vancast. I think I've exhausted all the video gaming stuff I have to go over right now. I mean, I just got finished playing Cave Story earlier today, and then Super Mario Bros. 3 before that, so I don't know. And with that, I'm going to send you guys back to the studio. I'll see you there.
Okay, so I learned a lesson doing that vancast, and that's that I have to silence the ringer, because as texts came in, being that I was talking into my phone, it was so overbearing that it drowned me out, and I had no idea. I don't know why the thought hadn't occurred to me, it just didn't. So I will take care of that in the future. If you're still listening 39 minutes in, I thank you for hanging with us. All right, boys and girls, quick shout out to the sponsors. This is a Patreon-sponsored program. I offer early access to the show whenever I can, but I have a feeling that the schedule might change because with the quarantine, I'm able to keep up with TCR, but my recording schedule has changed. So I'm not sure if the release day is going to change to compensate or if I'm going to find some other way to say thanks to the supporters. But right now, early access to the show, and I read their names off in a hollow distinguished gentlemen. They are Hemrock, EmeraldRangers.com, Tecmoballs, Dorobka, Konstantin Kelman, and Eric Controller. Thank you guys so much for supporting. I hope you're having a good time. I hope you guys had a good Halloween, and I hope you're playing some good games. Okay, let's go back to the archives and play another chiptune, and then we'll do some more talking stuff. That's Sync X with Meltdown 76. That's off the Battle of the Bits Spring Tracks 8. Again, not free anymore, but it is still available. You can go over to Battle of the Bits and get a copy of that album off of their Bandcamp page. We got more TCR coming up. Stick with us.
What's going on, everybody? It's old CF. Time for a Vancast. On my way to get some takeout to enjoy with my wife. Thought we'd do the update here in the van because I do so much enjoy podcasting this way. And what a tale I have to tell. Let's turn back the clock just a wee bit. My son had a birthday very close to Halloween. So on his birthday, we purchased Undertale for him. It's a game he's been interested in playing. He likes the soundtrack very much. Never had the chance to play the game. $10 regular price on Steam. I don't usually buy regular price games. This is a special occasion because it's one specifically for my son. So I picked it up, we got it, and he was interested. Very cool. Okay, so after that, like the following day, I had this idea. I might like to get a Steam game for myself. Particularly, there's this game Among Us, which has been pretty popular lately. I've seen people make jokes about it, but I never actually played it. It looks like a Trouble in Terrorist Town kind of thing, you know, social engineering, find the murderer, that sort of stuff. Okay, looks interesting, and it's super cheap, $5. Great. So, if I'm going to buy this game for $5, maybe I should get rid of some of my old trading cards just to get a few pennies on the dollar and maybe make it like $4.75 or something. I don't know. A couple cents off. Nothing big, you know, but these trading cards have been sitting in my Steam inventory for years. They do nothing. And I'm not interested in leveling up my profile anymore. I got all the profile showcases I could ever want. So let's get rid of these things. So I opened up my profile on Steam, and one at a time I started putting the cards up for sale. Steam did not like this one bit. I got through about 4 cards before it was like, no. You need to start confirming every single one of these from your cell phone. And I was like, oh geez, okay. And then I started to get irritated. And I did a few more, and then it was like, no. This card here, you can't sell it on the Steam market anymore. And then I was really mad. I was like, all of these cards that I have, because we're talking like 5 pages of cards, they're all going to go now. If I can sell it for a penny, it's going for that penny. And I went through all of my cards, and I put them all up for sale. And then I switched gears over to Counter-Strike Global Offensive. I was big into it in college. I wasted a lot of money on those cosmetic items. Let's put them up for sale. I'm not going to play that game again. If I am, I certainly don't need like a pretty knife to do it. So I put all that stuff up for sale, and apparently it had all appreciated in value a great deal. In particular, my knife. I don't know what possessed me to waste $40 on a knife, but I had, if you play CSGO, I had a $40 a purple gut knife, purple handle. It had the like little fish hook at the end of it. And initially $40, appreciated to like over 80. So that plus like my $10 StatTrak AK plus my $8 op skin plus $5 here, $5 there, so on and down the line. I didn't even sell all my skins. I cleared them all out except for like a few of the ones I really wanted to keep. And then I sold off all my TF2 stuff, and then I sold off, believe it or not, I had a couple of H1Z1 items that were worth a couple of dollars. And long story short, I now have $135 in Steam credit. Oh, jeez. That's $135 after $20 of purchases, by the way. So this is after we bought my son's regular price Steam game for his birthday. It's like, what are you gonna do? Maybe I could get a refund on that, because it's only been a few days. I could get a refund, and then I could just buy it again using the store credit. There you go. That's what I should do. So in terms of what I've actually been spending the money on, Not much. I only bought a couple of things. I bought that game Levelhead. I'm pretty sure I talked about this last week. It's solid platforming, and it's driven by community-based content, right? So the levels are all generated by people. It's a nice, strong, complex, or not complex, but a very strong level builder. It's simple to work with, but can do complex things. We'll put it that way. So I've been loving Levelhead. My son has as well. And then I bought Among Us, which was the game I set out to buy, which is only $5, and I loved that as well. That was amazing. And I ended up getting it for my phone as well because it's cross-platform. So that's been gaming for me for the past couple days. It's actually been I'm uncharacteristically enjoying sitting down and playing games, doing some platforming, and a little bit of social engineering. Levelhead's a little bit of a difficult one to talk about, though, because all of the content is community-based. So it's not like, say, Super Mario Brothers 2 for the NES, where I can evoke that game and everyone who's played it before knows exactly what it looks like and exactly what the levels are like and what it should feel like. And we can talk about common secrets that we both know, and then we can relate to each other on that level. With a game that's community-driven, it's very difficult to do that. So I've been playing Levelhead. That's a thing. And it was good. That game, I think it's $20 regular price, but it was $16 for me. Because of a sale. So that was cool. This all happened. All of this went down the day before the Halloween sales. Now, I didn't find much in the Halloween sales that interested me this year, but this is the time of year on Steam where we get 3 big sales, one after another. First is Halloween, then a month later you have Thanksgiving, or they call it like the Harvest Time sale or something like that. And then after that, there's the Christmas sale, or the winter sale as they call it. So, several opportunities for some awesome good times to be had by all. Lots of fun. GOG had a big sale as well. I did some snooping around on GOG. Didn't pick anything up, though. It's silly to have all this money in Steam credit and then go spend money on GOG. As much as I know GOG is an awesome service. They had Realms of the Haunting for $1.25, which has been on my wish list for a while. But I didn't pull the trigger on it. Again, same reason why. I don't think I'm going to be getting anything else for the Steam Halloween sale. I'm tempted to pick up Resident Evil Remake 3. But even with the sale, that's $30. And I think I might have finished up my Resident Evil, big mega phase that was going on several months back. When I played through the Resident Evil 2 remake, which was a wonderful game that I would recommend to anybody. This game, it looks really cool. It's not rated quite as highly. The campaign is even shorter, that's what they're saying. And it's because they wanted to shoehorn in a multiplayer mode, which I'm all about, by the way. Shoehorn that thing in there. But the multiplayer mode has to sit on a completed game. That's the only real way to make it work, in my opinion. Doesn't seem like the case. So, I'm kind of waffling back and forth about that in my head now that I think about it. I don't know. I might sit down and watch some Let's Plays of the multiplayer mode, because $30 for what's they saying, like 8-hour campaign or something like that. I don't know. That's okay. But the understanding is that this is a game that you're buying. Multiplayer is part of the package now with this game. It's got to be one of the things you're going to do as a goal of buying the game. It's like Call of Duty. Call of Duty games all have multiplayer campaigns or whatever. But when you buy those games, you're not buying it for the multiplayer campaign. Not for the most part, unless you're going back and buying like an old one now at a reduced rate. You're not buying the new Call of Duty game because you want to play through the story. You're buying it because you play through the story once just to see what's there, but ultimately you're trying to take part in that multiplayer action. That kind of seems where Resident Evil 3 Remake is right now. And it's kind of sad to be able to relate it to Call of Duty on that much of a scale, but at the same time, I don't know, man, that just seems to be where it's at. I'm glad they made something. I'm glad the series isn't dead. It's still my favorite horror series, which is weird because I know there have been really far superior games outside of it in the horror genre. I don't know. Very flawed franchise, but I still really like it. And with that, I'm at the burrito place. Let's go in and see what they got. All right. I have obtained burritos. Burrito get. I guess that's the burrito theme song. Off we go. So yeah, that's pretty neat. To be able to get something really fancy on the Steams. Although I'm a little bit limited because of my graphics card. I'm just starting to see my graphics card show up short on the low end, really, for the first time since I got that thing. GTX 750 Ti, man, it's a good solid graphics card. Doesn't have a ton of power, but it's stable. It does okay. I've never really been the cutting edge guy when it comes to video games. So this is a card that is not going to be good enough for everybody, but has treated me very well over the years. Hang on a second. I'm doing a traffic circle, and those are always nerve-wracking. Yeah, there we go. But I'm starting to see, and I wish I could remember what game it was. Every game, it has its minimum requirements, and then it has its recommended requirements. I'm now seeing games come out with the minimum requirements, saying something like GTX 900 plus series graphics cards. Basically just saying, hey man, you might be able to get this to run, but it ain't going to be good. I don't know. There's a really good YouTube channel. I don't know if he's still around, but it was the, what was it called? Low graphics gamer or something like that. And the idea was he would take popular video games and drop them all the way down to their bare minimum. And then he would see if he could get inside the settings from the back end and drop them down even further. And then see how degraded you could make the graphics of a game where it would still be playable. Okay, so at the time I was watching this guy, this was when what was that game that was so popular? Battlegrounds, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, PUBG. Yeah, there you go. When that was really just taking hold, that game kind of swept through in a hurry, and then not so much anymore. But when that one was really popular, that was a game that was among the games that was like, you can kind of play this with a 750 Ti, but not really, not at a competitive level. And he was able to make it look like absolute garbage, but make it playable. And I think a channel that researches how that's done and tricks to do that, I think is a good public service, because the reality is gaming PCs are awesome, but a whole lot of people out there are trying to game without, quote unquote gaming hardware. And that was me for a long time. And just being satisfied with my current rig and not taking the time to update it frequently. Now I am that again, apparently. So, not that I'm complaining. I am very happy with my rig. It's treated me very well over the years. But sometimes you just got to go down to low-end graphics, Sometimes you see the ultra graphic settings and those VSync checkboxes, and you just got to let them go, It hurts, but it's all right. You win in the long run because you get to have fun and whatnot. It is what it is, as they say. How we doing on time? or about 14 minutes in. That is, I think, the entirety of everything that's happened on Steam, for the most part. The only other minor bit is my Atomic Purple Game Boy Color has been missing for several weeks, and I finally found it. It was in my desk drawer, of all places, where I'd never find it. I think the idea was, I set it up, it had Tetris Attack in it, the Game Boy version of Tetris Attack, which is a weird game, very old. And I put it in there and tried to set it up as like a grab and go kind of thing for when I'm working at my desk and I need a minute to like empty out my brain, which in theory is a good idea. The problem is I forgot it was in there, and there it stayed. And I like that old Game Boy Color, man. That is a thing that still gets use. I don't sit and have long gaming sessions with it, but it was my prime choice for real quick slot machine games, pachinko games, casino games, chess, and all that sort of stuff. I liked it. The kind of thing you could get for a dime on legit on any given smartphone. It's just that this was on an old Game Boy. And I can tell you with 100% certainty, even now, having cleaned house quite a bit when it comes to video games, my Game Boy collection, by and large, is staying untouched. I'm not letting go of a single Game Boy game, unless it's something I predetermined to give out. Like, I have a couple of games that I've set aside for Jerry Terrifying for several years now. Those are still his. But none of that stuff's getting sold. That's mine, baby. All those imports, those... All right, what's the hold up, man? Oh, I see. He's letting somebody else go. Okay, not so bad. Not so bad. So right now, I got some Mexican food on the way back to hang out with my wife. And I don't know. I'm going to see if she might be into that game Among Us. Because social engineering is just so much fun. Oh my gosh. Played a lot of Trouble in Terrorist Town in college. Let's find out who the killer is. Who do you think the killer is? I don't know. That's great. That's a good time, man. I kind of regret that there's no voice chat on it, and the game is really supposed to be played without it anyway. But I feel like if I could get into a decent like Discord group to play Among Us, that would be that game at its peak, because that was really what kept me coming back to Trouble in Terrorist Town for, all those hours, and what made it ultimately the most played game in my Steam library for many years was because I would get onto these servers and I would just chat with the guys, and I knew all the guys in that one server that I played at, and they knew me, and that was really it. The game was good. I loved the game, but it was like the premier hangout game, in my opinion. And I think this other Among Us game could be that. It could be. I don't know. We'll see. I thought Dead by Daylight was going to be that game for a while. But not so much. Dead by Daylight community is a bit of a tough one. What are you going to do? And with that, boys and girls, it is burrito time. I'm going to send you guys back to the studio. And hopefully... This is being recorded on Sunday. It's been a crazy weekend because of the holiday and because of my son's birthday being so close to each other. Hopefully I can wrap this up tomorrow and we can get this out and we can all have a good time. I'll see you then.
Failbag time, everyone. First one comes from Hemrock. He says, Hey, Paisan, thank you for another episode and thank you for reading my email. I hope you and the fam are doing well and staying safe. I'm slowly plugging away my NES collection. I played The Adventures in the Magic Kingdom with my young daughter recently. And when I say played with my daughter, I mean that I played the game while she watched. Yeah, good times, man. I dumped the card into my Retro Freak, which is essentially the Japanese version of the Retron 5, with more horns and whistles, and patched it to change the main character from a cowboy to Mickey Mouse, as my daughter loves Minnie and Mickey Mouse. That's awesome. But wow, the game is not for the faint of heart. It's not a leisurely stroll down the Disney's Main Street. It's downright difficult. After playing it for about an hour and a half, I was only able to beat one of the rides throughout the park. And what executive thought it was a good idea not to make a Mickey Mouse the main protagonist? A cowboy? What? I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. 1 because I like Disney, and 1 star because my daughter and I still seem to enjoy the game despite many, many game overs. All right, quick break so we can comment on Adventures of the Magic Kingdom. Not a great game, but I do like it that you can walk around the Magic Kingdom, and it's a pretty faithful layout of the true-to-life Magic Kingdom. I can't remember if this came before or after Mickey Mouse Capades, but remember, that's what it's called, right? Mickey Mouse Capades? There was a really bad Mickey Mouse game that nobody liked on the NES. And I believe, if I have my history right, came out prior to this and probably didn't do so well, which might be the reason why you don't play as Mickey Mouse. The only other thing I can think of, and I'd have to look this up on the internet, is maybe they tried to make it where meeting Mickey Mouse was the big payoff at the end. I'm just guessing. I don't know. But I do remember playing that game and thinking it was cool to walk around the Magic Kingdom for 5 minutes. Back to the email. I also played Alpha Mission for the NES. It's a solid vertically scrolling shooter that I never really heard anyone speak about. I'm giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It's certainly worth a pickup because you see it around for a few bucks. However, the days of walking into a thrift shop and picking up a non-sports NES game for a few bucks may be all behind us. This brings me to a question. One of the reasons I started collecting retro games was because it was cheap and fun to find in the wild. Not to mention that the games themselves can be quite enjoyable, and I harbor some nostalgia for a few of them. But in any case, what got you into retro gaming? And what was the last great pickup that you found in the wild? Mine was a copy of Streets of Rage 2 in box for $5 back around 2016 at a flea market. Okay, a couple things here. First of all, when I got into retro gaming, it was the PS1 era. Okay, so in the PS1 era, if you recall, that's when gaming was finding its 3D legs. So PS1 was making a lot of games rendered in 3D. Nintendo 64 was enjoying a lot of success from Mario 64, and they were trying to do it with other franchises with mixed success. So around the same time, we saw Castlevania on the 64, and it was really, really, really bad. So the old 2D sprite-based gaming was all but behind us at the time. It was not really something that was being done. So I liked the 2D sprite-based gaming, and it was also, NES games were not cool yet, so just like you were saying, they were cheap and easy to pick up. So you really had the choice between paying a ton of money for NES, for PS1 era 3D graphics, or paying very little money for some of what we now call the all-time greats. It was, in my opinion, it was a no-brainer, especially since I had an older brother who was all in the PS1 era, and he was able to pick up a lot of the games that were like exceptions. Because of course there was some 2D stuff going on in PS1, right? Some JRPGs, you know, they had some. I'm sure you could rattle off like several exceptions. Castlevania, Symphony of the Night, you know, this, that, or the other. But that wasn't the focus of the industry at the time. I was able to spend my money getting the NES classics, and my older brother was able to explore some of the awesome stuff that the PS1 had to offer. It was a really great time. That's how I got into retro gaming. Now, I'm also the youngest of 5 kids, so while I was doing that, I was able to get my hands on some of the things I was only able to really see prior to that. When I was younger, my older brother had a Game Boy, the original DMG gray brick Game Boy, and he very rarely let me play it. He didn't really like me playing it so much. I did get to play it, but it was a struggle. So then when I started collecting retro games, and I got that Game Boy, it was sort of like a wish fulfillment sort of thing. I finally didn't have to beg him to play it. I had my own copy. And that's where it kind of snowballed, because now I had a little NES collection that, at that time, it wasn't just a collecting thing. It was strictly playing, and I was able to sink a lot of time into it. And that's where I made a lot of my retro game, planted my retro game roots. You know, I played a lot of the games that I think of forever during that time. Yeah, it was really good. And when I wasn't playing the old NES games, I was on the computer playing old CD-ROM games, which I also feel very strongly for today. Now, moving on, these days it's different because the NES games are now collector's items, and they're not all $1 million. You can still get a decent NES game, you know, for a few bucks off of eBay, like, you know, if you don't mind spending $6 or $7. But the market has definitely changed in 20 years. So my interests have adjusted with it. I still feel nostalgic for those old games, but yeah, it's a different thing now. It's a different thing now. That's how I got into it. As far as the last great pickup I found in the wild, we're going to exclude conventions because I got some really good pickups when we were at MagFest together last time. You might remember I got it, like a brand new, untouched. It's one of the Street Fighter games. If you give me a second, I have it here. I can't remember which one. I want to get this right. Hang on. Yes.
It is the special championship edition of Street Fighter II for the Sega Genesis, complete in box, with manual and little mail-in insert and whatnot. And my goodness, it's a gorgeous game. Gorgeous game. So, excluding conventions, it was probably, if you go way back, one of like my little one-off videos where I went to the thrift store, and you could see that I got a couple of Tiger Electronic games, and I got, it's like Gauntlet 4 or something like that. One of the weird Gauntlet games on the Sega Genesis, and a Golden Axe game as well. And those didn't get played much, but those were my last real finds, I think, out in the wild. Before this was like before I saw that there were people actually paying off the workers at the thrift store to pull the video games out before they ever made it to the shelf. So what are you gonna do? Yeah. Back to the email. At the beginning of the last episode, you read some forum posts about mini consoles. I think overall the mini consoles are pretty rad. I agree that it may be a response to the Raspberry Pi, and yes, they would certainly have to be more relevant and exciting. They would have certainly been more relevant and exciting had they been released over a decade ago. However, all in all, it seems that they are pretty decent, with a glaring exception of the PS1 Classic. I gotta say, are we done with that phase? I mean, we could still see a decent, mini console releases, right? We just saw the TurboGrafx 16 release. That was pretty awesome. This is the only one I was really considering buying, was that, and maybe the PS1 after it crashed and went for really cheap. I don't know. We just need one more, like, mad successful release, and then there you go. It continues. All right, give me a second here. Have you played Ultima 7? It's hard for me to say what the greatest RPG of all time is, since I've only played a small fraction of RPGs available. However, for me, Morrowind, Final Fantasy Tactics, and World of Warcraft are up there on my list. I looked up a few lists of the mainstream, which seem to highly praise The Witcher 3, Chrono Trigger, Baldur's Gate 2, and Final Fantasy 6, amongst many others. I also went to Metacritic just to see what RPGs had the highest rankings, and I think Metacritic is about as objective as you can get in amalgamating this and the subjective feelings of the entire English-speaking world. According to Metacritic, the best RPG of all time, drumroll, is a tie between Mass Effect 2 and Skyrim, both with a score of 96. I can certainly see Skyrim at the top, but I didn't expect Mass Effect 2. I'm not saying it's a bad game, I just didn't realize that it's highly regarded. As an aside, Final Fantasy IX is the highest ranking Final Fantasy game on Metacritic. Okay, let's talk about Mass Effect 2. Think back, when Mass Effect 2 came out, and there was no Mass Effect 3 yet, that was an insanely popular game that people loved to play through again and again and again. They would play through it over and over again, behaving differently towards the different NPCs, making different choices, and it all seemed to matter. Mass Effect didn't become like a weird, not very well-liked franchise until 3 came out. Once 3 came out, everyone hated the ending, and then it was all downhill from there. Okay? 2 was enormously popular. And then people didn't like the way they finished it with 3, and then they made a real ending as like a DLC that people hated even more, and then they made Mass Effect Andromeda, which was hated even more still. So, but 2 was the peak of that series. As far as Metacritic is concerned, I also agree that it is the best we have. I take it with a grain of salt because me being the age that I am, it's easier for me to prefer the older games just because that's what I like, that's what I have a preference to. But there's more people playing games now than there were. I got into Steam probably around 2010, and at the time, at the peak of the day, there would be, on a busy day, 2 million people playing, and now there's 22 million people playing. So you can see there's a lot more now than there used to be. So it would make sense to hear something like Skyrim or a more modern game have the most favor in terms of numbers, just because video games are a more highly consumed medium now than they used to be. Hang on. 1 second here. Also, Skyrim has been on absolutely every system multiple times, so people have had the most chances to play it. Not a bad game. I wouldn't call it the best of all time. I wouldn't call it my favorite. Neither one of those games are my favorite of all time. But Skyrim was also like the very last big time moddable game that I think Bethesda is ever going to make. At least in the Elder Scrolls franchise. Because I know after that we had Fallout 4, which had a decent amount of mods, but
eventually it was the last game that they put out before they turned on this paid mod stuff. So I don't know. You can still get that game, and I know that there's mods for it that you have to pay for, but you can still get that game and get a bunch of free mods for it, and it's awesome. And I don't think we're going to ever see a game like that from Bethesda again, now that they've managed to monetize our work as a community, which makes my blood boil, but, what are you going to do? We can argue, there's good arguments back and forth on that point either way. I don't like it much, though. Let's see. When will you give us a tour of your man cave so we can see all your favorite belt scrollers for your consoles? You've been asking that every week. I'm going to do it. I just need to clean the place first, and that's been a struggle. All right, give me 1 second, and then we'll get back to this. Okay, I like the video game consoles just as much as I like the video game consoles just as much as I like the Jedi consoles from Episode 1. Oh dear. I'll tell you what. One of the Star Wars games that I had the most fun with, not the best Star Wars game in the world, but the one I had the most fun with, was Star Wars Rebel Assault 2 for the PS1. It was in the FMV days, but it was, I think, post-Hollyweird era, so they were able to actually make it pretty well done. I mean, they had access to the Star Wars franchise licenses, so clearly they had money behind them, and there was some full motion video. It was a good game. So if you play that on a PS1, then you are serving the console on your console, so to speak. What console did you end up putting on your desk? PS2, silver slimline PS2 that I got for Christmas many years ago, and it currently has the Sonic Mega Collection Plus in it, which I got from the Retro Junk Box. PS2 all the way, at least for now. This is something that can change. If it's not getting played, I can unhook it, I can replace it with the Sega Genesis, whatever it may be. Hughes from the Retro League always said console instead of console. Maybe it's a Midwestern thing, not sure. What console did you end up putting on your desk? Yeah, PS2. You mentioned Final Fantasy 7, 9, and 3 are your favorite in the series. I'm assuming when you say 3, you're referring to the Japanese FF3 that you purchased from the Ouya. Is that right? Yes, it is. PS5, FF5 is like an upgraded FF3. FF9 is still in my backlog, but I hear it's very good. I hear very good things. Your FF9 video happens to be one of my favorite TCTV episodes. Yeah, I was very proud of that. To clear things up, I meant the Japanese FF3, particularly the one that's on the Ouya, which, if you know your Final Fantasy, that was a port of the DS port of FF3. So not the old NES game. It was they rebuilt it with 3D graphics. They put it out on the Nintendo DS, and it sold there with some extra goodies. But, nice HD remastered version, or at least for the time. And then that was ported over to the Ouya, which I bought. I had a lot of fun with it, and I lost my save, but I now have it again on Steam. So that here again, we're not talking about best FF ever. We're talking about my personal favorite that I had the most fun with. Yeah, I was really proud of the Final Fantasy IX video. I had recently played Final Fantasy IX, and I had a lot to say on it. Yeah, it's good times. Thanks, man. In regards to bring back Monday Night Morrowind, I think you should play whatever fashion you feel will be the easiest. It sounds like starting with your current save game might be the best, as opposed to starting all the way over again. It would be great for you to review the mods that you installed and go over what you have accomplished up to that point. Do you have the boots of blinding speed? No, I don't. The game can really drag on until you get those boots. Yes, it can. I think that's the reason why the original series died, was watching me walk from one way to the other, and I didn't really have time to edit those bits out. If you're interested, I'd love to jump online when you start and give you any pointers I can come up with. I'm actually pretty flexible this week and the next. Send me a text if you're interested. This email came in last week. I gotta text you now because I would love to do that. I know you like to game early in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. I think I could make that work. If we make an appointment, as weird as that sounds, I can clear a spot with my wife and make sure the kids are set, and we can do something. That would be a lot of fun, actually. I think it would be awesome if you made an audio commentary for Indie Game the Movie. Yeah, I think that would be cool too. It would be a lot of fun. I would talk a lot of smack about those guys, which I don't usually like to speak negatively about other people if I can avoid it. But what I would want to do is do a lot of research on what has happened since that movie came out, because I think that's where the interesting stuff lies, because we have Phil Fish, who was big in the indie scene at the time, became a really hated figure. And then shortly after the movie came out, he quit making video games forever, for one reason or another, whatever the case may be. That happened after that movie came out. So there's one part in the movie where he's talking about, if this happens, if this happens, if this happens, I'm done with video games forever. This is, foreshadow. I think there's interesting things to be found there, but I'd have to do some more research. Whatever. Big shout out to Kazlab. Good to hear from you, mate. I really got into the original Smash Brothers on N64, but none of the later ones. Even to this day, I feel like I can hold my own in that game. The last time I really played it was at MagFest. I'm not really big into the fighting. I'm not really a big fighting game fan. So with that said, I suppose the original Smash was my favorite fighter. However, I do have soft spots for Street Fighter 2, Eternal Champions, and Shaq Fu. However, I'm pretty rubbish at all three of them. And yes, you heard me correctly. That's Shaq Fu for the Sega Genesis. I think it's a decent game, and I even went to watch the Shaq Fu tournament at MagFest. It was pretty fun. 3 huzzahs for Kaisercade. Hope you're doing well. I know you talk a lot about video games, but one of your old videos on YouTube made reference to novels. Have any good sci-fi or fantasy book recommendations? Keep rolling retro, Hemrock. 2 that I enjoy very much. Gordon R. Dickerson's The Pritcher Mass, which is not a good book in the conventional sense. It's a very quick read, and The Pritcher Mass is a group of people who are trying to accomplish something, building something, using a psychic link. And meanwhile, the world outside has been taken over by a virus. Not a virus, but a spore, rather, that when you breathe it in, it plants a plant inside of you, which eventually suffocates you. So the people are living in bubbles. Then you have like sort of a cat and mouse game where there's an explosion at the beginning, and there's terrorists, and there's a fugitive who's running away. And it's a good book. It's cheesy, and it's a quick read. I like it. The Pritcher Mass, Gordon R. Dickerson. I also like Arthur C. Clarke's 2001, A Space Odyssey, and very different from the movie. This is not an instance of a movie made from a book. This was quite literally Arthur C. Clarke and Stanley Kubrick made the screenplay together, and then both simultaneously went to do their separate projects. So because of that, the book and the movie are very close in ways that you don't see those things paralleled usually. But then also the book, like in the first bit especially, goes off in a completely different direction. Like beginning of 2001 in the movie, you see the apes, right? And they're jumping up and down and smashing each other and evolving when they see the obelisk. Whereas in the book, there is a character name in that phase, and you can follow it a little bit more closely. Been a lot of years since I read it, but that's a good one. Of course, if you've never read it, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Douglas Adams, that's required reading. But again, reading that book is like a comic book. You can burn through it super fast because it's super witty and funny and is just a good time. Also, pretty much anything by Robert Heinlein. Yeah, there you go. Keep rolling retro, Hemrock. Good to hear from you, brother. Hope you're doing well. Can't wait to sit down and talk some Morrowind. We'll make it happen. By the way, are we waiting on me for the play-by-email game of Alpha Centauri? I gotta check that out, because I noticed it's been a little while since we've had a turn. And there have been a couple instances in the past where that's happened, and it turned out everyone was waiting on me, and we didn't know it. Or I didn't know it, so I'll have to check that out. Yeah, awesome to hear from you. What an awesome email, man. Thanks so much. Looking back at my comments on YouTube this past week, it's been a nice crop of comments. Jason E. Lambeth of Painted Blonde Records writes, "That's so much fun, dude. It's probably been about 30 years since I played that game. I wish I had a Nintendo lying around." He's leaving out of my super quick Let's Play of the original Super Mario Brothers. That is awesome, because Jason is a musician and big into art and making music and collages and visual arts as opposed to playing video games. So it's awesome to see him make a comment on one of my gaming related videos. Glad you enjoyed it, man. Yeah, NESs are good fun. They really are. I was lucky. I got mine at a pawn shop CD game exchange probably like 20 years ago now. And even at the time, the big retro craze was just starting to kick off. So I felt like I was lucky to pick one up for $40 with all the original hardware and stuff. This one has not been modded in any way, which is cool. Eric Controller says, "Nice playthrough. It was a relaxing way to spend 22 minutes. Thanks, man." Alex Swingle says, 14 minutes in, hearing the recommendations of horror games reminded me that horror fans don't know what is actually scary. And you know what? I would agree with that. Horror fans like blood, they like jump scares, they like whatnot. As for what's scary, tension. real tension. You don't see it a lot in horror games, but some games really have it. He goes on another comment, 20 minutes in, Sniper Wolf at least had a reason to not want to kill her. The whole boss fight was stupid from start to finish, though. I wanted the lady big boss to die within the first minute of MGS3. Meryl was cool, I just wanted Meryl to be useful instead of a damsel. He's referring, of course, to who is the best written female character in a video game, and the forum post that we read claimed that it was the boss from MGS3, and I heartily disagreed. My comment was that she's not even the best female character written in the MGS franchise. Looks like Mr. Swingle agrees with me. Good to hear from your brother. Hope you're doing well. Play some video games for me. Light Studios. Now this is a rough one. Light Studios, our good buddy Sendu writes, so how's that goal of multiple articles in October going? Oof. Man, what's funny about this comment is when I read this, I read it when it came in, and I wanted to type something up to respond to you directly, but I couldn't because in the moment when I read it, two of my children were screaming over each other, and I couldn't. So that's how it's going. Now, today's the 2nd of November. Technically, at the time you left this, I could have written 2 articles that night and still managed to make the quota. I know what I promised. I'm gonna get you some. I'm gonna get going on that website. I have not gone stale. I have to change my schedule. I'm still kind of operating on the same schedule as I did before I had our 3rd child, and it's not working. So I'm still finding time. There's still time to do things, but I have to kind of rearrange when I would be creative and get work done. Work for myself, I mean. Okay, by the way, Sindhu, hope you're doing well. I heard you were having some issues and whatnot. I hope you're in good health, and take care. Don't give up, man. Times are tough. Tough times are going to happen. I guarantee it. So if you're in tough times, weather the storm, man. Don't give up. Keep getting out of bed in the morning. Keep going to sleep at night. You know, don't stay up all night. Do what you got to do to stay healthy. And leave me another brutal comment next week. Alex Wingle writes, 25 minutes in, it's kind of weird for anybody to suggest the best musician in gaming when it's a medium that requires a variety to sustain itself. Most of the songs I enjoy from the Genesis don't come from Tommy, and would even make the top 10 list for Genesis songs, let alone the other consoles in the 16-bit era. He's still a great musician, but it's more of an example of the high amount of quality released prevents a best musician from being selected. I agree, but you could say best in terms of what's your most favorite, you know what I mean? You could say, oh, Tommy's the best, but then play some game that he had nothing to do with and decide it's better, 20 years later, and that's fine. Just personal preference, man. What do you think's before Mega Man, before I ever played Mega Man, because Mega Man came into the picture late for me. Not super late, but when we played the Nintendo, we found Mega Man 2 at the place called the Toy Exchange, and we bought it for $5. My older brother bought it. This was years after we had gotten into the Nintendo, so we already had a pretty decent collection of games. So before that time, before Mega Man 2, I thought the best music in any video game was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! It was the best. Dun, 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 dun. I thought it was the best lead to any track in any video game ever. I still like it. I still think it's great. I don't know who wrote that song, but I would put him on my list. Eric Controller writes, great music once again, man. I love it. I too had my first horror experience with the original Doom, and again with the PS1 Doom. For me, it was a dread of facing monsters that lay ahead. I would get to points in the game where I would activate the monsters, feel overwhelmed and frightened, and run away and hide, and then hear them roar and growl louder and louder as they would get closer. Plus, often the lighting was horror-esque by having flashing lights or lights that were dim or no light at all. Which, for its time, Doom was a revolution in light manipulation in this way. It was much more innocent when I first played Doom, and I didn't have good skill, and the game didn't have a grasp on FPS mechanics, which I think really gave me the sense of dread and fear going forward in the game. A few years later, I wanted to show my friend the game, but he didn't have a computer, only a PlayStation. So we went to the video store and rented PlayStation Doom, and what I noticed right off was the music is way more horrific and moody, and the lighting was even more effective at being stress-inducing. I'll never forget those early days of video game horror, and I know that it influenced me in a big way. That's awesome, man. That's so cool. Yeah, Doom gave me nightmares for sure. I would have nightmares that I was playing Doom, but I was really there, because that's how dreams work for me, I guess. And the monsters would be bearing down on me, and I would think, I wish I could turn the machine off. Yeah, I was a dumb kid. What are you gonna do? I don't remember much about Doom on the PlayStation, though. I know it existed, and I remember that we bought a game at a thrift store once, and when we got it home and opened it up, there were 2 discs inside, and one of them was Final Doom for the PlayStation. It wasn't me that made this purchase, it was my buddy, and it was like, woohoo, that's super cool. And I vaguely remember seeing us running Final Doom for the PlayStation and thinking it looked just like the the PC version. But I don't really remember. I don't know how true that is now. If I looked it up now, it'd probably be grossly different. Especially now that we have Xandronum and source ports and all kinds of stuff. But it's good times. Eric, brother, hope you're doing well. Thanks for checking in, man. Okay, everybody, the TCR schedule is going to change soon. I'm still getting these out. Like right now, doing this in the morning, I feel really comfortable talking, and I feel like this has been a good episode. I want to rearrange my schedule so this is when I'm doing my recording. I don't know how it's going to work yet, so stick with me. For now, I'm going to keep trying to get these out on Mondays, but when I come up with something else that works, I'll make sure and let you know in a small video on the YouTube channel so that you don't have to listen to the entire hour-plus podcast to get up with the schedule changes. And that's TCR for this week. Thank you so much for listening. We are go an hour and a half in, another jumbo episode. What a crazy time it's been. I hope you guys are out there staying safe. It's October. If you like Steam, pick yourself up a nice Steam game, and take care of yourselves. Keep your head up. Make sure you're taking care of your noggin. All right? Don't let yourself get all depressed just because we're inside a lot right now. I'll see you next week.